Now that additional Epstein files have been released, there's even more overlap between Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Gates, pandemic planning, Event 201, and the massive vaccine rollout that funneled billions into organizations like Gates' Global Vaccine Alliance called Gavi. So let's dig in.
Well, he's dead. So, in general, you always have to be careful.
Now, before this is dismissed as conspiracy, it's important to note that everything referenced comes directly from millions of pages of Epstein-related documents recently released by the U.S. Department of Justice. If informed consent and transparency matter to you, this information is highly important. It begins with the Epstein-Gates relationship, which of course has been framed publicly as being strictly about philanthropy. Despite Epstein's 2008 conviction for procuring a minor for prostitution, Bill Gates met with him repeatedly beginning in 2011, not once or twice, but multiple times.
No doubt seen the allegations, including some of them from the last 24 to 48 hours. Are they true?
No, apparently Jeffrey wrote an email to himself. That email was never sent. The email is, false. So I don't know what his thinking was there.
Emails Epstein sent to himself in 2013 contain allegations that Gates engaged in extramarital sexual activity, allegedly resulting in an STD that required antibiotics. Epstein even claimed that Gates sought to secretly administer those antibiotics to his then wife, Melinda Gates. Gates, of course, denies these claims, calling them absurd, and has since said he regrets every minute of his association with Epstein.
It's personally hard whenever those details come up, right? Because brings back memories of some very, very painful times in my marriage, but I have moved on from that. I purposely pushed it away and I moved on.
Melinda expresses empathy for Epstein's victims.
No girl should ever be put in the situation that they were put in by Epstein and whatever was going on with all of the various people around him.
And doubles down that her ex's connection to the convicted sex offender was part of her choice to end their 27-year marriage.
It wasn't one moment or one specific thing that happened. There just came a point in time where there was enough there that I realized it just wasn't healthy and I couldn't trust what we had. I left my marriage. I had to leave my marriage. I wanted to leave my marriage. I had to leave I felt I needed to eventually leave the foundation. So it's just sad.
But the Epstein-Gates bromance went beyond social contact. Newly released files include correspondence in which Epstein and Gates discuss topics such as biological defense, health data, neurotechnology, and pandemic simulations. An internal March 3, 2017 email copied to Bill Gates and Larry Cohen outlines proposed deliverables for work tied to BGC3. That's Gates' private office and think tank, now called Gates Ventures. The sender describes collaborating with Cohen and consulting multiple Gates advisors to define a scope of work focused on domestic health and neurotechnology. The proposals include developing a blueprint for a privacy-preserving digital health data system, white papers on U.S. consumer health spending, and neurotechnologies for chronic disease, an assessment of neurotechnology as a national security issue, and follow-up technical recommendations for a pandemic simulation project known as STRAIN. How did this kind of strategic planning and research for Gates-affiliated initiatives come to be archived by Jeffrey Epstein? And what role, if any, did the financier have on insight or influence over the work detailed? Now, fast forward to October 2019, just months before COVID-19 emerged, the Gates Foundation partnered with the World Economic Forum and Johns Hopkins University to host Event 201, a high-level pandemic simulation modeling event based on, you guessed it, a global coronavirus outbreak. The exercise envisioned supply chain collapse, economic turmoil, mass misinformation, and sweeping government responses. 15 leaders from business, government, and public health role-played how such a crisis would be managed. A Gates Foundation executive, Chris Elias, participated directly. Organizers insist the exercise was purely fictional and not predictive, but the timing is highly suspicious, especially given that the simulated virus shared pretty striking similarities with what unfolded soon after. When COVID-19 hit, governments imposed lockdowns, restricted movement, and enacted widespread vaccine mandates. Regulatory agencies like Health Canada fast-tracked procurement and distribution of novel products with limited oversight. Big Pharma was basically like, trust us, and Health Canada did. Meanwhile, entities positioned to manage global vaccine distribution saw enormous financial gains. Chief among them was Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, founded by Bill Gates in 1999 with an initial $750 million contribution. By the time COVID-19 arrived, Gates had invested over $4 billion into Gavi. While the organization's stated mission focuses on vaccinating children in low-income countries, it became central to global COVID vaccine distribution during the pandemic, coinciding with unprecedented profits for pharmaceutical manufacturers. Never mind that Canadian taxpayers are inadvertently funding this global vaccine empire, but the overlap between all of these happenings is pretty much impossible to ignore. Prior pandemic simulations, centralized global response mechanisms, coercive mandates, and billions flowing through institutions closely tied to the same players who helped design the framework. College dropout Gates, with zero medical training and no democratic mandate, openly pushed for a permanent global squad of pandemic assessors to grade countries on their compliance with pandemic response plans through war game-style drills every 5 years.
The WHO is going to need more resources to have a dedicated team, not just for when the epidemic comes, but to go to the world's countries and make sure that these drills are being done. You know, we do fire drills. You know, the Defense Department does war games. We need for epidemics to practice. In fact, one of the reasons why Australia did well is that it, like Taiwan, was threatened by SARS-CoV-1. And so this idea of, okay, who are these PCR people? How do you get them engaged? It was partly practiced because of that previous threat. And so we need to be doing every 5 years a really comprehensive exercise at both country and regional level of pandemic preparedness. And you need a global group that's kind of scoring everybody and saying, hey, you know, if you're not participating in this, you could be the source of the next pandemic. And that's bad for the entire world. This is like a fire that goes global.
Now, when all of this is viewed alongside Lockstep, a scenario from the Rockefeller Foundation's 2010 report, Scenarios for the Future of Technology and International Development, which envisioned a world reshaped by fear, centralized authority, and health security prioritized over personal freedom, it begins to seem less like disorder and more like design. So the question remains, and we should all ask, were we living through an unforeseen emergency or simply following a script written long before the first lockdown? For Rebel News, I'm Tamara Uvalini. If you'd like to see more reports just like this one, and specifically to see what the World Health Organization is up to, head on over to exposethewho.com. There you can sign up to our mailing list and support this kind of journalism if you appreciate it. All of that and more at exposethewho.com.